One of my favorite comedians would be George Carlin, who is this sort of almost philosopher, political commentator who wraps his thoughts and ideas into a comedic format, which I just find extremely entertaining and empowering. And I wish he was still here just so I could, hear the things he has to say about the current sphere of politics. With that being said, one of my favorite quotes that George Carlin has is something along the lines of, these political elitists in in Washington, right? He goes, it's a big, big old party and you ain't in it. And I think that goes to show that, the scary part of having a government that is at least intended to be for the people, by the people, and of the people, you know, very quickly that line gets drawn and separated between, it's us, the people, versus the government. When, the founding fathers intended for, the people themselves to be the said rulers, the people are supposed to be the quote unquote boss. And this, I got prompted to make this video because, you get only such a small sphere of reality, no matter how many deep dive corners of the internet you go on, right? I have my biases, I have my upbringing, I have my religious affiliations, and whatnot. And I only tend to gravitate towards things that interest me and, you know, confirm my viewpoints, which a lot of people also do. But I think one thing people are missing with the idea of radicalization about how people become quote unquote so far right and so far left is money. Like, seriously, money plays such a big issue. I read this article and listening to all these journalists about a lot of people who were on the Capitol on January 6th. Whether or not you believe it was a riot or an insurrection is beyond the point I'm trying to make. A lot of those folks were suffering from serious financial losses, bankruptcy, insurmountable amounts of debt, and things of that nature. And, you know, obviously, when you are at your angriest, at your worst, you obviously lose all that idea of rationale. So if you wanted to attack this idea, if you want to dissect this idea, I think politics should be about sympathy. I think it's very poor, um, a quality of a character, action of a politician, but it's mostly the people who claim to know a lot about politics, many like myself, and I try to avoid this idea of blaming the people. You should never, ever blame the people, and that might be my hottest take ever. It ultimately should be on the hands of the politician and, the elected official to ensure that general welfare for the people, right? Obviously, if you hate Trump or whatever, um, I've heard a lot of people like, oh, all these stupid people who don't know anything, they're voting for Trump even though their lives are going to get worse under Trump. You know, I think that's just a lack of sympathy and empathy, right? Obviously, do I think there are people who are expressing of hatred and things like that? Yeah, of course. But I think the vast majority of people, even if they may seem very radicalized, you know, when you're lost in the sauce, like I said, when you're in the thick of it, you lose that idea of rationale. But that shouldn't discredit you from, being treated like a human, understanding, your problems and all that kind of stuff. Now, with that being said, I made a video, a couple videos back of like, what's this next politician going to look like once the Biden and Trump sort of era, once the Ronald Reagan-esque figure politician dies out, what are we going to look at? And, I had a conversation with my Uber driver about, you know, the idea that it's no longer a divide over maybe say abortion rights or religious rights or trans or anything like of those natures, or even, the idea of minority suppression. I think we are truly divided in America more by class than anything. And for better or for worse, I'm scared, but I'm also a little hopeful that this next big politician, who I predict will, win in a landslide similar to a Ronald Reagan or FDR, is going to capitalize on just that. The idea that many people are struggling financially. I mean, 70% of people live paycheck to paycheck in this country. That is just, you can't blame the people. You just can't blame the people. I can't, because the people are not the ones writing the laws. It's the politicians, right? And obviously, you can throw the counter argument, say, then vote for a better politician. But the problem you have is that most of these politicians are very deceptive, very good at, what they say, and even if they provide lip service, they're still screwing over the people. And you saw that with the United Healthcare situation. That man should have never died, the CEO. But what was interesting was that people started opening the floor to conversation, saying, hey, we have a big problem with healthcare in this country. And it wasn't just a conservative or liberal thing, it was people along class lines. But I'm also scared, right? Because just as easy as a politician can exploit the differences between abortion and transgender, whatever, it's that easy as also, if not easier, to exploit the class divide. And in many ways, Trump has tugged on those heartstrings, but he hasn't mastered it, I think, as well as one can. Obviously, you'd have a different outcome, a different approval rating, and such and so forth. But he's noticing these things. And, J.D. Vance, right, coming from that Appalachian background, coming dirt poor, politics society, someone I very much look up to. But, most of these videos now are just becoming messages to J.D. Vance because he's the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. He's going to be the leader when the Trump force is gone or whatnot. And, are you going to continue that MAGA principle? Are you going to stick up for the people who are struggling financially throughout America, whether you're in Appalachia or the inner city of Chicago? Or are you going to tug on those heartstrings to an extent where you, make these people bend over backwards, vote for you, and, continue the process of deception? But I guess, mark my words, I haven't been wrong yet in any of my predictions. But I think this next huge president, whoever he or she may be, will be tugging on those heartstrings. But what I'm nervous about is whether or not they will promise, to actually solve it. And am I saying socialism is the answer? Probably not. I'm not a socialist. I happen to subscribe to the ideas and philosophies of capitalism, not crony capitalism like we have today. But yeah, we'll see. Never blame the people. We're all in this together. But thank you.